You laughed at a joke that wasn't funny. Not because you found it funny, because laughing was easier than explaining why you didn't have it in you today. You said, "I'm fine," to someone who actually asked how you were doing. Not the throwaway kind of asking, the real kind. And you still said fine because the truth felt unnecessary to hand someone at 11 in the morning. You've posted the photo from the good 5 minutes of a bad week and called it your life. You've shown up to the group chat with jokes you didn't feel. You've hosted dinner, made the toast, laughed at the right moments, hugged people goodbye, and then sat in your car in the driveway for 20 minutes before you could make yourself go inside. If any of that sounds familiar, you already know what this is. You've been performing happiness, not lying. Exactly. Something quieter than lying. A constant, low-grade editing of yourself so that what you show the world stays easier for everyone to be around, including you. And here's the part nobody tells you. That performance has a bill. It doesn't come due all at once. It comes due slowly, in a currency you don't notice you're spending, until one day you look up and you don't actually know how you feel anymore. Because you've been managing how you look for so long that the two got tangled together. This is about how that happens, why it happens, and what it actually takes to stop. Carl Jung had a word for this. He called it the persona, borrowed from the Latin word for the mask actors wore in ancient theater to signal which character they were playing. Jung wasn't talking about lying. He was describing something every single person does, because every single person has to. The persona is the version of you that's built for public function. It's professional you at work, polite you at the family dinner, upbeat you in the group chat. It exists because a raw, unfiltered version of your inner state, dumped onto every person you interact with, would make daily life impossible. Some editing is not dishonesty. It's how a functioning adult moves through a world full of other people who also have their own weather systems going on inside them. The problem isn't that the persona exists. The problem is what happens when you forget it's a mask at all and start living entirely inside it. Think about how this usually starts. Almost nobody decides, as an adult, to become a person who performs happiness. It gets built earlier than that, usually without anyone naming it out loud. Maybe you grew up in a house where your sadness made someone else uncomfortable, a parent who got anxious when you cried, so you learned that crying cost you something. Or the opposite, a home already carrying so much weight that you understood, without being told, that adding your own pain to the pile wasn't an option. You became the easy kid, the low-maintenance one, the one who didn't need managing. Maybe it started later, in a friend group where one person was always too much, always bringing the mood down, and you watched what happened to them and quietly decided you would never be that person. Maybe it started at work, where the version of you that got promoted, that got trusted with more, that people wanted in the room, was the version that never looked rattled, competent, steady, always fine. Whatever the origin, the mechanism is the same. At some point, you learn that your real internal state was inconvenient, or risky, or simply less welcome than a curated one. And you adapted, the way people always adapt to their environment. You built a persona that was easier for everyone to be around. And it worked. That's the part that makes it so hard to undo. It worked. People liked the easy version of you. They stopped worrying about you. They came to you for support instead of the other way around. The performance got rewarded over and over until it stopped feeling like a performance and started feeling like your personality. This is where Jung's insight gets uncomfortable. He warned that if you identify too completely with your persona, you risk losing track of who you are underneath it. Not in some dramatic, unravel in public way, quietly. You wake up one day, fully fluent in projecting a version of yourself you no longer fully recognize, and strangely out of practice at knowing what you actually feel moment to moment when nobody's watching. That's not a character flaw. It's what happens to anyone who spends years being rewarded for managing their image instead of expressing their reality. Here's what makes this particular pattern so dangerous. It doesn't look like a problem from the outside, and for a long time, it doesn't feel like one from the inside either. People who perform happiness for a living, so to speak, are usually well-liked. They're the friend everyone wants at the party, the coworker nobody worries about, the family member who always seems to have it together. From the outside, this looks like emotional health. It can look, ironically, like the exact opposite of what's actually happening. The first cost is disconnection from your own internal signal. Emotions exist to tell you something. Anger tells you a boundary got crossed. Sadness tells you something mattered, and it's gone. Fear tells you to pay attention. When you spend years overriding those signals in favor of whatever expression is socially convenient, the signal doesn't disappear. It just gets quieter and harder to read. People who've performed happiness for a long time often describe a strange numbness when you finally ask them directly how they feel. Not because they don't feel anything, because they've lost fluency in translating the feeling into language, since language was never the point. Managing the room was the point. The second cost is loneliness that hides in plain sight. This is the cruelest part of the pattern. You can be surrounded by people, liked by nearly everyone you know, and still be desperately lonely. Because loneliness isn't really about how many people are around you. It's about how many people actually know you. If everyone in your life only has access to the curated version, then even a packed room leaves you alone in the only way that actually matters. The third cost is that it makes you very hard to help. Think about what it takes for someone to show up for you. They need to know something is wrong. If you're skilled enough at the performance, and most people who've been doing this for years are extremely skilled, nobody around you ever gets that information. So they don't show up, not because they don't care, but because you've made it structurally impossible for them to know you need them. And then, in the quietest and most bitter version of this, you start to resent them for not noticing. Which isn't fair to them, but it's a completely understandable thing to feel because some part of you was hoping, even while performing, that somebody would see through it, that somebody would ask twice. The fourth cost is the one that takes the longest to show up and hits the hardest: identity erosion. If you play a role convincingly enough, for long enough, you eventually stop being able to find the line between the role and yourself. People in this position often report a specific kind of dread. Not sadness exactly, something closer to disorientation, a sense of, I don't actually know what I like anymore, what I want, how I really feel about my own life, because I've spent so long being whoever the room needed that the original version got buried under the performance. This is what Jung meant when he talked about the danger of the persona swallowing the self. It's not a moral failure. It's what happens, mechanically, to anyone who spends enough years optimizing their outside instead of tending to their inside. This pattern is easy to miss in yourself, precisely because it's designed to be invisible. Here are the signs that tend to show up. You feel a specific kind of exhaustion after social situations that should have been easy. Not the tiredness of introversion, which is normal and has nothing to do with this. A heavier fatigue, the kind that comes from performance rather than presence. If a 2-hour dinner with friends leaves you feeling like you ran a shift at work, that's worth paying attention to. You answer, "How are you?" on autopilot before your brain has even processed the question. Watch yourself the next time someone asks. If the answer comes out before you've actually checked in with yourself, that's the persona talking, not you. You struggle to name what you're feeling, even in private, even when nobody's watching. This is one of the clearest signs. If you sit alone and try to identify your emotional state and come up mostly blank, or default immediately to fine even in your own head, the muscle for reading your internal state has atrophied from disuse. You feel resentment that doesn't seem to have a clear cause. This is the buildup of years of unexpressed reality. It leaks out sideways, as irritability, as a short temper about small things, as a low hum of bitterness you can't quite trace to a source. Usually the source is simple. You've been giving people the easy version of you for so long that some part of you is quietly furious. Nobody asked for the real one. You avoid people who might actually see through the performance. Interesting pattern here. People who perform happiness often, without realizing it, drift away from the friends who are hardest to fool. The ones who ask a second time, the ones who go quiet and just wait. Those relationships start to feel uncomfortable, not because anything is wrong with them, but because they threaten the mask. And the clearest sign of all, you feel more like yourself, more relaxed, more real, when you're completely alone than at any point around other people. If solitude feels like relief rather than loneliness, that's not necessarily a bad thing on its own, but combined with the rest of this list, It usually means the version of you that shows up for others has drifted very far from the version that exists in private. Knowing the pattern isn't the same as breaking it. Breaking it takes deliberate, uncomfortable practice because you're not just changing a habit. You're rebuilding a muscle that's been unused for years, and the people around you have gotten used to the old version, which means change here doesn't just feel awkward internally. It can genuinely destabilize relationships that were built on the performance. That's worth knowing going in, so it doesn't blindside you. The first step is smaller than people expect, and that's exactly why it works. Don't try to become radically, permanently honest overnight. That's too large a shift, and it usually collapses under its own weight within a week. Instead, pick one person, just one. Someone reasonably safe, someone who has earned at least a baseline of trust, and the next time they ask how you are, pause half a second longer than usual before answering. That half second is the whole exercise. It's the moment where you actually check in with yourself before defaulting to the script. Some days the honest answer will still be, "I'm okay, that's fine." The point isn't to manufacture a crisis. The point is to rebuild the habit of checking before performing. The second step is learning to tolerate the discomfort of being seen. This is the part almost nobody prepares for. When you stop performing, even a little, even with one person, there's often a wave of anxiety that shows up uninvited. A voice that says, "This is too much, they didn't ask for this, put it back." That voice is not telling you the truth. It's the old protective strategy defending its territory, because it kept you safe for a long time and doesn't know yet that the environment has changed. The way through is not to argue with the voice. It's to let the discomfort happen, stay in the conversation anyway, and notice, afterward, that the world didn't end. That evidence accumulates slower than you'd like, but it does accumulate. The third step is separating the persona from an enemy. This one matters more than it sounds like it should. A lot of people, once they understand this pattern, swing hard the other way and decide the mask itself is the problem, that authenticity means abandoning all social filtering entirely. That's not the goal, and chasing it usually backfires, because total unfiltered expression at work or with strangers isn't authenticity, it's just a different kind of dysfunction. The goal isn't to destroy the persona, it's to stop living exclusively inside it. Keep the professional version for the boardroom. Keep the composed version for the situations that actually call for composure. Just make sure that somewhere, with someone, the mask comes off entirely, and that you remember, underneath all of it, who's wearing it. The fourth step is learning to name feelings in real time, not after the fact. Most people who performed happiness for years can eventually describe how they felt about something, in retrospect, once it's safe. The harder skill is naming it while it's happening. A simple practice that works here. Several times a day, stop for 10 seconds and silently finish the sentence, "Right now, I feel." Not what you should feel, not what would be convenient to feel. What's actually there? This feels clumsy and artificial at first. That's normal. You're rebuilding a sense that atrophied from years of override. And atrophied things always feel stiff before they feel natural again. The fifth step, and the one most people skip because it's the most frightening, is accepting that some relationships were built on the performance and won't survive its absence. This is a hard truth, but it's a necessary one. If someone in your life only ever wanted the easy version of you, the one who never needed anything, never brought a hard mood into the room, never asked for support, then that relationship was never really with you in the first place. It was with the mask. Letting the real version show up will cost you those relationships, sometimes. That's not a failure. That's the system finally showing you which connections were real and which were just well managed. Here's what people rarely tell you about the other side of this, because it doesn't get talked about as much as the struggle does. The relationships that survive the mask coming off get dramatically stronger, not weaker. There's a specific kind of relief in being fully known by even one or two people. A relief that no amount of being liked by 100 people who only know the performance can replace. Quantity of approval and quality of connection are not the same currency, and once you feel the difference, it's very hard to go back to trading in the wrong one. The exhaustion lifts, slowly but noticeably. Managing an image is expensive. It runs constantly, in the background, in every interaction, and you don't realize how much energy it's costing until you stop paying it. People who've done this work often describe feeling, for the first time in years, like they have some spare capacity left at the end of a day, because they're not spending half their attention on performance anymore. You start to actually know what you want. This might be the most valuable shift of all. Years of managing your outside leaves very little bandwidth for tending to your inside, which means most people who've been performing for a long time genuinely don't know their own preferences anymore, on anything from what career they actually want to what they want for dinner. Rebuilding the habit of checking in with yourself doesn't just repair your relationships with other people. It repairs your relationship with your own mind. And the resentment fades, not because people suddenly start noticing you more, but because you stop needing them to notice, since you're no longer hiding anything that needs finding. The quiet bitterness that builds from being unseen has nowhere left to grow once you've made yourself seeable. None of this happens overnight, and none of it happens without discomfort. But the mask was never actually protecting you. It was protecting other people's comfort, at a cost that was always, quietly, coming out of you. You don't have to keep paying it. If this is where you are right now, the smallest possible next step is the one from earlier. One person, one slightly longer pause before you answer how you are. That's how it starts.